You are good at your job. You've been good for years, and somehow the credit keeps landing on someone else. You know the feeling. The project succeeds, and a different name gets mentioned. The promotion goes to the person who talks more and delivers less. The meeting ends, and you realize you said the right thing at the right time, and it registered with nobody. You are competent, reliable, and completely invisible. And the worst part is you can't even be angry about it, because nothing unfair technically happened. You were just overlooked. Again. So you do the only thing you know how to do. You work harder, you get better, you wait for someone to notice. They won't. And it's not because they're blind, and it's not because you're not good enough. It's because being overlooked isn't an accident. It's an outcome. The predictable output of a system running exactly as designed. And once you see the design, you can never be invisible in the same way again. This isn't motivation. Nobody's going to tell you to advocate for yourself more. These are 10 laws taken from a man who spent his life studying why some people rise in a system while better people rot inside it. His name was Han Fei. Historians call him the Chinese Machiavelli, except he came 1,500 years before Machiavelli was born, and he was, if anything, colder. He wrote for kings, but he was writing about you. That's what we do here, by the way. We take the oldest strategic minds in the world and use them on the problems you're actually facing. Ancient answers to modern walls. If that's useful, subscribe. Now, the 10 laws. Law 1. You are invisible by design, not by accident. Han Fei told a story about a king who loved to hear the you, a reed instrument played by an orchestra of 300 men. A man who could not play a single note joined that orchestra. He mimed, he swayed, he drew a full salary for years, because in an ensemble of 300 nobody can hear any individual. Then the king died. His successor preferred solos, and the man who couldn't play fled in the night before his turn came. Everyone tells this story as a warning about frauds. That's the shallow reading. Look at it from the other side. There were 300 musicians in that hall, and some of them were extraordinary. Do you know what happened to the best one? Nothing. Nothing at all. He was invisible for exactly the same reason the fraud was safe. Because in an ensemble, individual contribution cannot be perceived. The fraud was hiding in the ensemble, but so was the genius. The ensemble doesn't discriminate. That's your job. You're playing in the orchestra. Your work goes into a team, a project, a shared deliverable, and it comes out the other side as the team's result. Your excellence and the coaster's mediocrity get averaged into the same number. You're not being overlooked because someone failed to look. You're in a structure where looking closer is impossible, which means the first move is not to play better. It's to play something nobody else is playing. Solo work, named work, a piece of the outcome that has your fingerprints and only yours on it. Until some part of what you do can be heard alone, you can be the greatest musician in that hall for 30 years and die a member of the orchestra. Law 2. Your seat decides more than your skill. This was Han Fei's core idea, and it's the one that costs people the most. He called it Shi position. He said a dragon rides the clouds and rules the sky, but strip away the clouds and the dragon is no different from an earthworm. The power was never in the creature. It was in where it stood. 2 people, equally capable. One works on a project the leadership mentions in every board meeting. The other does harder, better work on something structurally invisible. Maintenance, internal tools, the thing that only gets noticed when it breaks. Same talent, wildly different lives, and the second one will spend a decade concluding that he isn't good enough, when the truth is that he's brilliant in a seat where brilliance doesn't transmit. Bill Gates understood this at 25. When IBM needed an operating system, he didn't take the paycheck for building one. He licensed it and kept the right to sell it to everyone else. Every machine sold paid him forever. He wasn't the best programmer in the world. He was standing in the best position in the industry, and he refused to move. Stop asking whether your work is good. Start asking whether your work is visible from where the decisions are made, because if it isn't, the quality of it is almost irrelevant. Law 3. What cannot be measured cannot be rewarded. It can only be expected. Han Fei was obsessed with a principle he called matching the name to the form, meaning a minister states what he will do, and then the ruler checks whether the result matches the claim. Not the effort, not the intention, the stated claim against the delivered result. Anything else, he said, is the ruler guessing. And a guessing ruler rewards whoever is best at seeming. Now look at your own work. If you can't state what you delivered as a claim and a result, a number, a named outcome, a thing that exists because you exist, then there is nothing for anyone to reward. There's only a vague sense that you're reliable, and reliable is not a reward category. It's a load-bearing assumption. This is why the person who does one visible, nameable thing per quarter outruns the person who quietly holds up the entire department. One of them produced a result. The other produced a feeling. Invisible excellence doesn't get rewarded. It gets expected. And expectations don't come with a raise. Law 4. Nobody will ever promote you out of gratitude. Here is the coldest thing Han Fei ever wrote, and it's the one you most need. He said the carriage maker hopes people grow rich, and the coffin maker hopes people die young. And neither is because one is kind and the other cruel. It's because of where their interest lies. That's not cynicism. That's a description. And you have been quietly betting your career against it. You've been operating on a theory. If I contribute enough, someone will feel they owe me. They won't. Not because they're bad people. Because gratitude isn't a mechanism. It's a feeling, and feelings don't allocate budgets. Interest allocates budgets. Charlie Munger said it in 6 words. Show me the incentive. I'll show you the outcome. Your manager doesn't promote you because you deserve it. He promotes you when promoting you serves his interest, or when not promoting you threatens it. That's the whole equation. Every year you spend waiting to be thanked is a year you spend outside the equation entirely. Pause for a second and be honest. Have you been working on some level as if the debt is accumulating, as if there's a ledger somewhere, and one day someone will look at it and settle up? Just answer. One word, hold it, because that ledger doesn't exist, and the people who rise figured that out years before you. Law 5. If you're not being heard, you're pitching in the wrong currency. Han Fei wrote an entire chapter on this, and it's the most psychologically sophisticated thing in the book. He called it the difficulty of persuasion, and his conclusion was startling. The difficulty is not in knowing what's true. It's not in having the argument. The difficulty, he said, is in knowing the mind of the person you're persuading and fitting your argument to it. He gives examples that are almost cruel. If a man secretly wants glory but publicly claims to want profit, and you pitch him on profit, he'll despise you as vulgar. If a man secretly wants profit but publicly claims to want glory, and you pitch him on glory, he'll take the meeting and never call you back. Now, translate. You walked into that meeting with the better idea. You had the data, you were right. And it went nowhere because you pitched it in the currency you value, not the currency your listener values. You talked about elegance and they wanted safety. You talked about the long term and they wanted something to say on Thursday. You were right in a language nobody in the room was buying in. The overlooked are very often people who are correct in the wrong dialect. Law 6. Become the thing they cannot afford to lose. Han Fei said all control comes down to 2 handles, reward and punishment. Whoever holds what you need holds you, so flip it. The question isn't, how do I earn more? It's, what would it cost this organization if I walked out on Friday? If the answer is a mildly annoying week, you are, in the coldest sense, free. Free to be ignored. free to be replaced, free to be overlooked forever, no matter how good you are. Notice what this is not. It's not doing more work. You can do triple the work and still be trivially replaceable. And if you've been here before, you know that doing more work is usually how you become the dumping ground, not the indispensable one. It's about owning something, a relationship the company would lose with you, a system only you truly understand, a skill the market is starving for, something where your departure creates a hole nobody knows how to fill. The moment losing you becomes expensive, everything changes, and you won't have to ask for any of it. Law 7. Never announce the climb. Han Fei taught rulers a technique he called shu, and part of it was this: do not let others see what you want. The moment they know what you're reaching for, they can position themselves against it, dangle it in front of you, or quietly make sure you never get it. Watch what happens to the person who announces at every review that they're gunning for the senior role. They've just handed every rival a target and a timeline. They've told their manager exactly which carrot keeps them working late for free. And they've made themselves easy to manage. Because a man whose desire is public is a man who can be strung along. The people who rise fast rarely narrate the rise. They build the position, become indispensable, gather leverage, quietly, and then the promotion looks inevitable, like it happened to them. It didn't. It was engineered in silence while everyone else was declaring their 5-year plan out loud. Law 8. The danger isn't above you, it's beside you. Han Fei has a chapter warning rulers about the people inside the palace, the ones with access, the ones who are trusted. His point was that the fatal threat almost never comes from the distant enemy. It comes from someone close enough to matter. The overlooked usually misread their situation as vertical. They think the problem is the boss, the system, the ceiling. Sometimes. But often the mechanism is horizontal. It's the colleague who is better at being seen than you are and who quietly absorbs the credit for shared work. Not through villainy, through presence. He's in the room when the outcome is discussed. You're at your desk finishing it. This isn't a call to distrust your team. It's a call to notice that credit doesn't flow to the person who did the work. It flows to the person standing where the work is discussed. If you are never in that room, someone else will describe your contribution, and they will describe it accurately, generously, and with themselves in the frame. Law 9. What made you good will not make you seen. Han Fei told one more story. A farmer saw a rabbit run into a tree stump and break its neck. Free dinner. So he abandoned his fields and sat by that stump, waiting. He starved, and the whole state laughed at him. You are the farmer. Somewhere early on, something worked. Head down, hard work, do it well, get praised. It worked in school. It might have worked in your first job. So you sat down by that stump and you've been waiting there ever since, doing the thing that used to bring rabbits. The world moved. The game changed at whatever level you're at now. It stopped rewarding execution and started rewarding visibility, judgment, ownership, position. And you kept executing brilliantly at a stump. Han Fei's actual point wasn't that the farmer was stupid. It was that the past is not a strategy. What made you valuable at one level is often exactly what makes you invisible at the next. Law 10. Have one line that does not move. Han Fei's deepest idea was law, Effa, and his most famous line about it is that the law does not bend for the noble, no exceptions, not for favorites, not for family, and crucially, not for the ruler himself. Ask why a king would ever give up the power to make exceptions, because a ruler who can make exceptions is a ruler worth lobbying. Every schemer in the court now has a reason to work on him, because he can be worked on. But a ruler bound by his own rules has nothing to sell, and so the pulling stops. For you, overlooked, this is the final law and the most useful one. The reason people take from you is that taking works. You're flexible, reasonable, you'll consider it. So the asks keep coming, because asking you has a positive expected return. You don't need to become difficult. You need one line, one that everyone learns does not move. Not defended by willpower, because willpower runs out and one fold erases 9 holds. Made structural, visible, expensive to cross. And once there is one thing about you that genuinely cannot be pushed, something strange happens to everything else. People start treating all of it with more care, because they no longer know exactly where the wall is. Now, I have to be clear, because 10 cold laws can be read badly. None of this says become a self-promoter, a credit thief, or a politician. That's the other failure mode, and it's just as fatal. The loud, empty one gets found out the moment the king asks for a solo. Every law here assumes you're actually good. If you're not, visibility will only make the emptiness legible faster. This is about closing the gap between what you are and what is perceived. That gap isn't vanity, it's the difference between a career and a waiting room. Being excellent and being invisible isn't humility. It's just a very polite way of letting the ensemble absorb your life. So let's go back to where we started. You, competent, reliable, and passed over again. You were never not good enough. You were good in an ensemble, in a seat nobody watches, in a currency nobody's buying, waiting for a gratitude that isn't a mechanism, next to someone who was in the room when it counted. Not one of those is a talent problem. Every one of them is a design problem, and designs can be changed. So don't think about how to work harder until they finally see you. Think about who you're becoming, not the best musician in an orchestra of 300 playing perfectly, heard by no one, waiting for a king who prefers solos, someone who stepped out of the ensemble and made sure that when the room goes quiet, there's exactly one instrument still playing. And here's the thing, Han Fei was one of an entire generation of Chinese minds who mapped how power actually works. The general who won by choosing the ground, the merchants who built fortunes by moving before the crowd. We're decoding every one of them, one mind at a time. If even one of these 10 explain something you've been calling bad luck for years, then you already understand why most people will play in the orchestra their whole lives and call it teamwork. A few will play the solo. Decide which one you are.